talking it. So my love of peanut butter is well known by the audience at this point in time.
Let's just talk about food today.
That you do it every day?
Well, I mean, it's not every day. It's not. I mean, because most of the time I'm not. But when I have the opportunity, that's what I have.
Okay.
And when I travel, I always travel with a peanut butter sandwich.
You do?
Yes.
Well, that's not unwise.
See, and this actually worked out really well when I was coming back from Corvette because I was stuck on the airplane in Minneapolis for 3 hours.
Oh, no.
And they basically said, you can get off the plane, but you may not get back on the plane. And so I was sitting next to a pilot, which made things interesting because this guy knew what was going on, and he whips out his phone and he's showing me stuff on the thing, and he's like, I got weather, your weather app. And so this guy had a very clever idea that to keep things cold, he had a, I don't know what you call, like a hot water bottle, the thing like in cartoons where people would put the thing on their head when they got a thing, like a headache.
Oh, a water bag type of thing?
Yeah. And what he would do is he'd say that he'd stay in hotels, he'd fill the thing with ice, screw it in, and he said it keeps food cold for 18 hours and doesn't sweat.
Oh, that's great.
You know that when you're done.
Trick of the road.
Right.
You can actually buy cool
On the
packs
sky.
now.
Well,
You don't have to resort to.
but that's a very clever idea, I thought.
Yeah, no, it is.
Highly
So
functional.
what was it? Was it weather in Minneapolis or weather in Detroit?
Detroit.
Okay.
Because we kept watching the storms roll.
Oh, it was last
Oh,
Thursday or Friday.
Friday.
Friday was
Yeah,
horrible.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and they kept stopping on top of Metro.
You mean the storm would stop?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it would not go anywhere. Then it would go away, and it would be replaced by another one.
I was up north, but the Ann Arbor Art Fairs got hit badly Friday evening, really badly.
The Ann Arbor Art Fair always gets hit.
Always gets hit by a thunderstorm. This was like the worst ever, apparently.
All the
Like
booths blew away.
a lot of booths just were picked up and like flung across the street, with their contents in them.
Really?
Yeah, it was bad for some depending on location. So.
And then what made things really bad at Metro is the fact that because there were so many flights canceled because there was a ground hold, all the flights came in at one time, and that Merriman going into the airport was backed up to 94.
Oh,
Wow.
So, shuttles and cabs and
So what time did you land in Detroit Friday finally?
maybe 8.
Oh, right in the heart of the bad time, yeah.
And I'm glad we got in because there was a storm right after that. But I had to go to Quick Park,
Yeah.
and I mean it was just like madness trying to get onto a shuttle. I mean there were just hundreds and hundreds of people, and it was like 100 degrees down there, and the humidity was just about 100.
Yeah.
And
just on top of everything
it was just
else.
and it was just like wow. And this was because I wanted to get home early. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific Time. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or on YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion. Lear, a global leader in automotive seating and electrical systems. Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world. And by BodyShopology.com. Not all body shops are created equal.
Welcome, one and all. Thanks for joining us. I just noticed that we have a new sponsor for the show, BodyShopology.com, which I understand is some clever way to hook yourself up with repair service. We want to welcome them to the show, and we appreciate them being here. And we also appreciate being here, Christie Schweinsberg from wardsauto.com.
Hi, Gary. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great.
It's been a while.
It has. Glad to be here.
Appreciate it very much. We have Joe DeMatio from Hagerty.
Hello.
And Joe brought us a copy of a book that Hagerty has just produced. And so what's this all about?
This is our kind of rallying cry to save driving and the appreciation of cars and car culture. It's an exploration of how cars foster friendship and family relationships, and celebration of the car as part of the greater culture.
And where can people get this?
It's available on Amazon and in the Hagerty.com store, but it's definitely on Amazon.
So Never Stop Driving, A Better Life Behind the Wheel, and it has a Corvette on the cover.
It does. That's a photo taken in Southern California a couple years ago for a story we did, and we liked that picture, and it did a good job of wrapping around the back cover also.
Very nice.
So, yeah.
Well, speaking of driving and of classic cars like this Corvette that's on the cover, we have a very special guest, Dave Rand, who is a longtime designer, worked for General Motors for several years in a number of iterations we'll get to perhaps. But we have you here because this weekend at the Inn of St. John's in Plymouth, Michigan, will be held the Concours d'Elegance of America.
That's right.
And so welcome. Appreciate your being here. So explain to us very simply what this event is and why people ought to come, whether they live far or near.
Okay, well, Concours d'Elegance is really competition of elegance, simply. And this is our 41st year with, on Sunday, with between 250 and 300 cars on the field. And these are cars from private collections that the public generally doesn't get to see. The cars come from some of the finest collections across the country. And this is an opportunity for people who have any interest in any type of car, whether it's a classic car or a more contemporary car, to see things that they would not ordinarily get to see. The Concours continues to be, I believe, one of the finest Concours in the country. It certainly is the finest in the Midwest, where, you know, people from the area, whether it's Michigan, Ohio, whatever, can see cars that they simply couldn't see anywhere else.
So, you know, you're saying that there's, so I look at some of the categories here. You have the Jazz Age, there's American popular cars, muscle cars.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's a wide array of cars. It's not
Absolutely.
not snooty and that.
There are snooty cars there. If
Yeah.
you're looking for snooty cars, you can have those. But it's a very diverse selection of cars. We have cars from the 1910s. All the way up to contemporary exotics. So again, whatever interest that somebody has in cars, they'll generally find it on the field. We have over 20 different classes of cars. So there are dragsters there are motorcycles, traditional classics, pre-war, European and American. And we even have a class of Hearst cars this year. We're showing
Hearst cars.
Hearst Shifter.
Oh, Hearst Shifter.
Yes.
Not the final ride.
Although there was a
Good to
class
clarify.
of Hearsts in previous years.
Really?
Not this year, though. We have Rolls Royces featured this year. We also have a class of Ferrari. We have a Jet Age class, which consists this year of Cadillac. We're doing all the tail fins from the inception in 1948 through 1964.
So the whole Bill Mitchell.
Well, it wasn't just
Harley Earl.
That's right. It started with Harley Earl through Bill Mitchell. So that should be a terrific field for people to see.
So how do these cars get selected? I mean, it isn't a situation where just anybody can say, hey, I have a car and it's old.
Right. It works both ways. There are people who will submit their cars, ask that their cars be on the field. But in general, it is an invitation. We will find out about a car, or we will establish a field of cars where the selection committee will go after particular cars.
That you know that people
That we know
have.
about, or we will be referred to. But yeah, we have a selection committee that generally goes after the cars that we want to see on the field.
And Does a committee consist of designers like yourself?
No, as a matter of fact, the committee is a fairly diverse group. I'm not sure of the exact backgrounds, but they're not designers.
And why is that?
Why are they not designers?
No, I mean, I can understand why they're not designers, but I mean, no, it would just seem to me that, I mean, so you know, given what you know in your eye, that you'd say, hey, this is really a fantastic car, we need to have this car, or this one, not so much. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand. Well, the selection committee has been established over a number of years, and they've been doing this over a number of years. And the fields, the class of cars tend to be repeated year after year with different cars. For example, the jet age, as I mentioned, is Cadillac this year, but it isn't always Cadillac. It can be you know, 50s, just 50s cars or whatever. So the selection committee has kind of established a pattern that has worked for them. And through their connections, these are the people who will get the cars. But you know, there is discussion sometimes about what the field should be, and we always talk about what should be on the field.
And there are also events that are associated with this, many of which are put on by Hagerty.
We do have a big presence at the Concours of America.
So tell people, I mean, okay, we assume everybody knows what Hagerty is, and I think that perhaps that's something we ought not do. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Hagerty, a lot of people know us as an insurer of classic and collector cars, which we certainly are. We are also wanting to make ourselves known within the greater car community as we're a sanctuary for car people. That's why we did the book. Anywhere there are people who love cars and cherish cars, Hagerty wants to be in that world. Our long-term goal is to help save driving, meaning we want to preserve the right of people to drive cars, you know, in the traditional way. Even as autonomous vehicles come online, we want to preserve the right of the rights of people to drive traditional cars and to coexist in the new world. So it's more than just insurance. That's why we have a big media division, and I'm part of that division. And that's why we put out a magazine and a website and a book and things like that, a lot of videos. So as part of being wherever people are who love cars, we are definitely present at the major concours in America, and Concours of America is one of the top 3, I would think, and so we are there in full force. So anywhere you go this weekend associated with the Concours, you will see Hagerty people and Hagerty banners, and we'll be handing out things. We sponsor on the other end of the scale, we sponsor the Concours de Lemons, which I believe is Saturday morning.
Saturday morning from 8 to 11.
Yeah. So that's why we're there.
And tell us about that.
Well, this is an outgrowth of the 24 Hours of Lemons races that have been developing over the past 10 to 15 years, which is, it's clunkers. It's a way to enjoy cars at a very low cost level. The Concours de Lemons is very much a tongue-in-cheek event held adjacent to traditional Concours with truly beautiful, magnificent cars. This is all kind of a little bit of an insider joke.
You tend not to find Ferraris at Concours.
Exactly. You find Gremlins and other cars of questionable taste and provenance.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of a big joke, but everybody gets the joke, and it's kind of a nice relief valve for people. So it's a really cool and fun event to attend, and really cool people that bring their cars to it. And often it is not at all unheard of that someone will have a car in Concours de Lemons and also have a car in the traditional Concours the next day.
Really?
That is not unheard of. So,
As far as the traditional Concours, what are some of your selection criteria? What are some of the reasons a vehicle would get approved? What are some of the reasons a vehicle would not make it?
Again, given that it is basically a competition of elegance, we're evaluating cars on the way they look. So cars, especially pre-war cars with custom bodies that are outstanding from a design standpoint. Those are the type of cars, and that would be invited on the field. And also, rarity. If it's you could argue that a 1930s Delage might have an advantage over a 1930s Dodge, for example.
Right.
What cars would be rejected? Cars that we've had instances where a custom body car has been modified over time and is not as it was originally, and that would be a consideration. We would try to vet the cars to make sure that they're correct on the field. Can't always do that, but it is a consideration to make sure that the cars are as they were when they were produced.
So let me ask you, as a designer, do you see cars that are being produced today that you imagine will be in a Concours, assuming that Hagerty manages to save driving at some point in the future? It's a big if there, by the way, John.
That's a difficult question because you could say that we have, in a given field, we could have cars that were considered, basically transportation, in the 60s. They weren't unusual then, but taking them out of context of that time and putting them into today's environment, they're suddenly special again.
Like a Corvette or something?
Oh, as a matter of fact, yes. So you could say the same thing for today's cars. If we take a car like a Mustang, today's Mustang, or a Camaro, and 30 or 40 years down the road, suddenly we put it into that time period, it becomes more interesting. I think the context has a lot to do with it. But, frankly, it's very difficult for me to look at today's cars and saying, oh, this will clearly be a classic, or this will be a collector's car. I think it's a very bad business to invest in a car thinking that it's going to be a collector car in 30 or 40 years.
But, okay, one of your roles at General Motors is you were doing advanced design. So did you think, okay, one of the objectives we have is to create an iconic vehicle, or is that something that you didn't even think about?
I don't think I really thought about that at that time. We really, the driving motivation was to do a great looking vehicle if you were working on the exterior. I don't think however, if you were working on a Corvette, you are aware that you are working on a somewhat iconic brand, and that you respect it from that perspective.
So, and you actually did work on Corvettes.
I did, sure. I suppose every designer at GM will claim that they worked on Corvettes at one time or another, especially now. But yeah, I did mention that in the early 80s I was working in the advanced studio on mid-engine Corvettes, and that there was a parallel program to the production program at the time that was a front-engine car that became the '84 Corvette. But that was a lot of fun. The dream of the mid-engine Corvette has existed for a long time.
I actually profiled Dick Rusin, the longtime GM designer, in our
Sure, I
magazine
know.
last year, and he confessed that he has worked at every division of GM, but he never worked on Corvette. He did one little advanced possible project, but he admitted didn't work on Corvette, which was kind of funny because he'd worked on everything else for like 40 years.
Dick Rusin was my first boss at GM.
Ah, wow.
Yeah, I know him, sure.
So there's a line of thinking out there that says once the baby boomer generation passes, that car shows will struggle because people my age and younger don't have any personal experience with what we know today is to be classic cars. How do you feel about that? And what is Concours doing to foster interest by the younger generation in these vehicles?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We ask ourselves about, who is our audience and how can we continue to have a good show that a younger viewer would relate to. Part of it is, getting a more diverse field of cars. Like I mentioned that we have, pre-war classic cars. Mm-hmm. Well, not everybody relates to that. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we have the more contemporary exotic cars, performance cars, motorcycles. We're trying to appeal to people who are younger, but it is it's very much on our minds about how we do this and how we can do it better. One thing that we have talked about is when we put a car on the field, we believe it should be important enough to be on the field, and therefore there should be a story about why it's there. Mm-hmm. A lot of people who come to the Concours tend to hide behind their camera. They're really there to get as many pictures as they can and go on to the next car. But we'd like people to understand why this car is important enough to be on the field. And so we're trying to tell the story more about having somebody speak to the cars, explain why they're important, why they're significant. We're trying different things, but it's really trying to ensure that people, apart from the way the car looks, they understand why the car is important enough for them to see it.
Sure.
So speaking of stories, for those of you out there, I was remiss, I should have done this earlier. If you have any questions, you can submit them through email at viewermail, all one word, at autoline.tv, viewermail, autoline.tv, or use a YouTube chat, or call us at 620-288-6546. That's 620-288-6546. And we will try to get it on the air, and the ones that you send in via email, I will see here. So, it's very interesting, this whole phenomenon of, things changing. I mean, when we think of cars, the levels of technology. I mean, you worked on interiors as well at one point in your career.
Yeah.
And, it's remarkable, the level of interfaces, the number of screens and buttons and things. I suppose at some point you could basically have an interiors show of the changes through the ages, which is interesting how if we think back to the early cars, the limited information they had.
Well, if you think about it, I'd argue that the interiors may have changed more than the exteriors have over the last 30 years or so. And part of that is simply because there is so much more information and features, and you still have the same amount of real estate in front of you to deal with that. So, changeable screens are really a good idea from that perspective. But, you mentioned Corvair, and I happen to have a 65 Corvair, and it's got, a couple of gauges and a few buttons on it, and that's it. There's not a lot to break, and considering that even a fairly basic car today has, there we go, will have multiple screens on it, and infotainment that you wouldn't even consider back in the 60s. The interiors, from my perspective, are much more challenging to design than the exteriors were, because you have to deal not just from an interface standpoint, but if you almost think of it from a furniture standpoint, the seating, comfort level, interiors are very challenging.
It almost seems that and this would be Joe's nightmare, that when we're having autonomous vehicles, that the interiors will change still again. I mean, in very different ways, since they'll probably be shared vehicles, since most people won't be able to afford to buy them, and you'll have to take into account, endless numbers of people that are getting into this thing. And
I think a subway car. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Right.
you bringing up, will the cars of today be the classics of tomorrow, makes me wonder, when there's so much software in a vehicle, will you even be able to drive it in 10 or 20? Can you even turn it on in 10 or 20 years if there's no updates available, what's going to happen? Is it just going to become?
I think the aftermarket is going to have to address this, and it may only be for particular cars of interest and not for every commodity car that's currently being produced. I'm just guessing. I don't
Right.
really know. But a high-performance Mustang today, 30 years from now, there will probably still be a sub-industry supporting that car.
But what about a Ford Focus 30 years from now?
Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, I asked because my husband had a Ford Taurus show, a 95 Ford Taurus show, and he couldn't find diagnostic codes for, I forget what area of the vehicle, but yeah, so it's already occurring.
Yeah.
If you're allowed to drive them.
Yeah,
Exactly.
going down that road.
We'll defend your right to the death. Somewhere.
Hagerty will take care of that for you.
You probably need another show to talk about that stuff.
Yes, yes.
So, okay, back to the Concours as we're getting towards the end of this here. So Sunday, from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. is when this happens. So this means that people who can find out information by going to ConcoursUSA.org, that's CONCURSUSA.org. And if you're watching this on a screen somewhere, you can see that there, where you can get information. And when you live around here, you see that there are satellite parking lots everywhere because apparently lots of people like to come to this thing, and so you can get all that information from that.
The people should realize that they will not be able to park at the show on Sunday. I think the Canton High School is where people will park and will be shuttled in.
And having used that shuttle system works beautifully. It's very easy, very convenient, much better to just go park, hop on the shuttle.
But if I could mention, there are a couple of events on Saturday as well that people should be aware of. There's a Cars and Coffee that I think is going on conjointly with
Hagerty. Yeah.
and that starts, I believe, at 7, goes through 11.
7 to 11 for the Cars and Coffee.
And that's free, and people can bring what they want, and that's usually a great show. There is a Battle of the Brits that happens, I think, Saturday night between 6 and 8.
Correct.
Also free, and if you have a British car or you like to look at British cars, that's a great event as well.
So it'll be the 60th anniversary of the Mini and the 110th anniversary of the Morgan.
Wow,
And
that's something.
Concours de Lemons on Saturday morning is free as well.
Which is from 8 till 11. There's an art exhibition from 9 to 3. So the events basically on Saturday are free.
Right. There is also a Motor City Mingle dinner that happens that night that is not free, but is a great gathering place for the owners of the cars on the field and people in the industry. A nice dinner. And there is an auction going on as well. And that's Friday night. I'm sorry, that's Friday night.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And on Saturday night, the chairman's dinner happens where we're honoring John Grondek, who is our collector of the year, Bill Warner, who is from Amelia Island, is our enthusiast of the year, and Wayne Carini is the Grand Marshal, and they will be there on Saturday for the chairman's dinner. So there are tickets available for that.
And then South Carolina Osprey, so this shows that people from far away are interested. How much does the Concours cost? So if somebody wants to come on Sunday, do you have any idea what?
Yes, it's $45.
Okay, so this to attend the event on Sunday.
Right, on Sunday. And people can get tickets ahead of time online. They can get them at the gate as well. But I would encourage people to try online first.
And it sounds like there's activities that are even going on Sunday. There are various judgings and presentations, the Automotive Heritage Awards. I was a judge for that, and
we have many awards. We have, I think, the Best of Show, American Best of Show Foreign, Most Elegant. There is Best GM Design, the Best Ford Design. I can't count all the awards that are presented.
And the awards presentations are really well done. Your presenters are very knowledgeable, and just observing the awards presentations is an educational, entertaining thing in itself.
Right.
And it moves quickly, and you learn a lot quickly as the cars are driven by
Right.
you.
The
Really
presenters
nice.
are very good, and it's a difficult job
Yeah.
to be knowledgeable about everything that's coming at you.
They're speaking quickly, the
Yes.
cars are coming, they're on it, they're really good.
Yeah.
Okay, Dave, final question to you. You've been doing this, attending this event for many years. What's a secret that you might want people to say? You know, you ought to know this before you come.
I would say that in general, you know, you will see cars together that you will not be able to see again. And people should take the opportunity while it's in front of them.
You'll be surprised, you know, you're walking around and you'll be like, oh, wow, you know, this happens a lot.
Sure.
My pro tip is wear a hat if it's sunny.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Sunscreen.
Yeah.
Sunscreen and a hat, right? Because it will be hot and it'll be a good day. It'll be worth coming.
And you'll spend a lot of time out there looking at these vehicles.
Absolutely.
Dave Rand, we want to thank you very much for appearing on Autoline After Hours, and we hope that people go to the Concours. And again, it's Concours USA, all one word. I guess USA is not a word. .org to get tickets there.
That's right.
So in St. John's, Plymouth, Michigan, and appreciate you being here today. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Gary. My pleasure.
So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to quiz these guys on a number that I came up with. So stay tuned.
Fender bender? Don't be a wreck. We've done the work for you. Head over to bodyshopology.com to find a credentialed body shop with trained technicians near you. Find yours today at bodyshopology.com.
The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace. No matter what the mode of transportation, there is always the need for an efficient propulsion system. And that's exactly what Borg-Warner has been doing since the earliest days of the automotive industry. We create innovative mobility technologies that reduce energy consumption and emissions while improving performance. Our proven track record has made us an industry leader in forward-looking propulsion solutions for combustion, hybrid, and electric vehicles.
All right, we're back. All right, so this is the legendary Dr. Data part of the show. It's become a legend, at least in my mind, maybe not others' mind. And I don't know that you've ever done this before.
No, this is all new to me. I'm not good at numbers.
Okay, so it has, well, numbers are involved, obviously, but so what we'll do is I will give you some numbers, and then you get to tell me what these numbers represent.
Okay.
Christie's done it, and it's mastery there. It's just,
Yeah.
So
She works for Automotive News. It's all about the numbers.
She
Work
works
for
for
Wards
Wards.
Auto. Hush your mouth. Oh my God.
yeah, she wants,
Automotive News.
she wants to go back to work tomorrow.
no,
Sorry,
no.
Come on.
it's your husband who
Yeah.
works for Automotive
Yeah.
News.
Christie's husband, Richard Truitt, does work for Automotive News, so they have this deep knowledge of automobiles and things related. So Katie, please bring up the first slide.
Am I-
All right, so here we go. So you can see it right here. So in 2016, this is all about like Concours things. I wanted to get something vintage. So a 2016 Class 8 truck, okay, a semi-truck, right? At auction in June. Now, was the price closer to $40,000, $60,000, or $100,000? This is for the big rig
I'm going to say
and
one.
in good shape.
And it was a 2016 model, or it was an old model offered for sale in 2016?
No, it's a 2016 model car that was in auction in June
Last
month.
month.
I know what
Right.
you're getting at, so I might have
That
an
it's a
unfair
big rig?
advantage, but I'm going to say 100,000.
100,000. Joe,
That was my guess.
100,000?
Yes.
See, they didn't think this was a very good idea for me to have this number, okay? And I think it's an amazing number because Katie, please bring up the answer. It was
Wow.
closer to $40,000, okay? And Katie, bring up the actual number, 35,770. And this is according to J.D. Power Commercial Truck Guidelines. I saw this number. I couldn't believe it. I contacted them. I said, "This is the number?"
Okay, because I thought this was going to relate to vehicles that predated whatever the latest emissions
No, it just-
rule was,
I
that
didn't-
people were clamoring for the older. Oh,
Is
I,
this-
I didn't think that.
Is this a reflection of there are too many rigs on the market?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I just thought it was amazing because it seems to me that like you could buy a used sedan for 35 grand. Just imagine you just come home someday with a big rig.
yeah, I don't know if that'd fly in my neighborhood.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't fly
Yeah.
in very many neighborhoods. So while we were talking about trucks, I mean, one of the things that occurred to me, and I was looking at the sales numbers for the first half of the year, that like if you look at the big three, their dependence on light trucks, okay? I mean, and I'm not necessarily talking about just, crossovers as well.
Right.
But I mean, it's just like, I was looking in June that General Motors, I mean, a fifth of its sales were Silverado.
Yeah,
A fifth. And
yeah.
okay, so I ask you, if there is a change in gas prices or if there's a change in people's taste, what's going to happen to these guys?
Well, obviously, they'll be in a world of hurt, but I really think that pickups are just one of those segments that they'll go down, but they'll never go away.
Yeah.
There's so many pickup fans. I mean, certainly you have the group that needs them for work and uses them every day for work, but there's other people like my dad who drives a pickup. It's just part of his character. He's a pickup guy. And
It's part of the American psyche, the pickup truck. And plus they are getting more efficient, and they could be made more efficient even more easily, I think. Especially if they rode a little lower. Not that I'm an aerodynamics expert, but the segment seems impervious to gas pricing even.
But we saw in 2008, 2009 that when and there were other factors. I mean, in terms of the economic turndown, but gasoline prices went spiked up to $4 a gallon, and suddenly, if you looked at the sales numbers for any of these trucks, I mean, they plummeted fast. I mean, it was not a slow go.
I think that was more related to the construction industry and the turndown in construction than it was the personal use buyer. I mean, certainly, we'll have another gas price spike. How high will it go? Who knows? I mean, people say now $4 is no big deal. I mean, I was just in California, and it is $4, and you do see F-150s all over the place. So I think the bigger issue...
Recreational or contractors?
Well, you can't tell, really. I mean, a little bit of both, it appeared. I think the bigger issue is, what do they have to offer people, GM, when there is a gas price spike? There's no Cruise anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Do they still have the subcompacts, the Veo and the...
Spark.
Yeah.
They have the Sonic, they have the Spark. But people will buy the Trax and people will buy the Equinox.
That's true. But if you look at those numbers, so like a year or two ago, I looked at big three crossovers versus Japanese crossovers. And, Escape used to be way up there. Equinox used to be way up there. And now you've got RAV4 selling more than 400,000 units a year. You've got Nissan Rogue doing, I think, close to 3. Honda CR-V is over 300,000. So they're losing market share.
They took most of that from Detroit.
Domestics, yeah. Or actually, probably they took most of it. It came out of cars. People left
cars of whatever type.
and went to.
Because some of those RAV4s.
So it's not a good thing for them then, right? I mean,
No.
No.
So I just worry that we're going to get back to a situation where these guys are going to find themselves at a loss.
Now, that said, the great American everyday car now is no longer a sedan, it's a crossover. It's an Equinox, it's an Escape, it's an Edge. And Detroit does make good crossovers. I would venture that a lot of the RAV4 sales were also taken from Camry, or some percentage.
I wouldn't say a lot of them, but
Some.
some. Yeah, I mean, Camry's gone down, Corolla's gone down from where they used to be. I mean, Prius has gone way down. I think RAV4 Hybrid is a lot of that.
I mean, I'm not thrilled that Detroit doesn't make that many actual cars anymore, but a counter argument is America's not buying actual cars, America's buying crossovers. So if America stops buying pickups, I think the next stop is going to be more crossovers,
Right.
not sedans. So the fact that we don't make sedans, and when we've made small cars, no one buys them regardless of the price of gas. So like to moan the lack of small cars, I drive a small car, I like small cars, but most Americans don't. They just don't, you know.
I think another issue is GM is now third in pickup sales, right? Because it's F-150, Ram, or Silverado is third. I think GM with Silverado and Sierra is still second.
Right.
But Silverado, or Ram is outselling Silverado. I think that's a bigger red flag for GM.
The fact that they're
number 3 now.
But
Or Chevy is number
But for
3.
Detroit as a whole, there's still, the three are fighting for this very large pie, and whether GM
Right.
is top or Ford, I mean, Ford is always top, but whoever is number 2 or 3.
bragging rights are bragging rights.
Yeah, I mean, bragging rights is a very Detroit thing, a very, you know, your average truck buyer in Texas doesn't really know or care who sells the most. I mean, they might be vaguely aware that the F-Series is
Well, I
number
think they
one.
care who sells the
You
most.
got your F-150 people. You got your
That's right.
Ford people. You got your
Yeah.
Ram.
I agree with that. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk not about trucks. We're going to talk about the Corvette a little bit. And before we go, you got a shout out here from Steve Sherman,
Oh,
ex-top gopher at Automobile Magazine. He says hello and thanks you for teaching him about
Hello,
evaluating
Steve.
cars with a fine-tooth comb so we can apply it to making compelling battery electric vehicles at Team Edison.
Steve is the son of Don Sherman, longtime car and driver editor, and Steve is working in electric vehicle technology.
Right? So he's...
Hello, Steve.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Lear Connexus offers a parental controls application with geofencing that sends notifications regarding driving behavior and location, including curfew alerts, acceleration alerts, and speed alerts. All delivered to a smartphone application that includes vehicle location, driver notifications, and a report card of driving history, including notifications when predefined geographic boundaries are crossed. For more information, visit Lear.com.
You used to live in Ann Arbor?
No.
I don't know why I always think you live in Ann Arbor.
Okay, and we are back. And as I mentioned, we're going to be talking a bit here about the C8 Corvette. Ray Mitrowitz says, hey, Gary, you're at the Corvette reveal last week. Yes, I was. And Neil Gridley comes in and says, from what I can find, it seems that many body panels on the C8 Corvette are still fiberglass-based. He's surprised. I expected extensive use of aluminum, high-strength steel, and carbon fiber. Okay, I'll address that one, and then I'll turn the rest over to you guys. There is high-strength steel, and there is aluminum, and there is even some carbon fiber that's used on the Corvette. But again, the body panels are a sheet-molded compound for purposes of, A, being a Corvette, because Corvettes cannot be made out of something that isn't a polymer-based, resin-based material because
Just because of tradition?
that's what Corvettes are.
Even when they threw tradition out the window for this one, they couldn't do it for that, for
But
the
we heard
body.
from Dave Rand that he was working on Corvettes way back when, so this is still traditional. But yeah, and plus the design. I mean, it's just like you can get these shapes that would be exceedingly difficult to make any other way. So, what do you guys think about the C8?
Well, we should ask you because you were there.
Yeah,
I was on
no,
vacation.
but I mean,
were
but-
you dazzled? Were you mesmerized? What was the atmosphere?
You know, I mean, it was okay. So they held this event in a what was a blimp hangar that was built during World War II. I mean, and you have no idea how big a blimp is until you see a blimp hangar. I mean, this thing was enormous. It was just huge, and you know, it was a big show. I mean, it was not this was just not a press reveal. This was a reveal to the Corvette faithful, the Corvette dealers.
They had a lot of owners.
They had a lot of owners and dealers, and I mean, it was the place was packed. I mean, they brought out 2 astronauts to open the presentation because it was, they were having this sort of Apollo 11 tie-in
50th
sort of
anniversary.
thing. And even though the date that they did it, which was a week ago today, had basically absolutely nothing to do with Apollo 11 50 years ago. I mean, nothing. But they did make an interesting point that through the years, the Corvette has been a particularly interesting car for astronauts. So apparently Alan Shepard was given, the first man in space from the United States, was given a Corvette. And then since then, the fighter jocks would want to drive fast and that was a Corvette.
There's been a long symbiotic relationship,
Right.
or a long relationship of, as you say, Chevy giving every astronaut a Corvette.
And the thing that struck me about the whole thing is that, I mean, you would be hard pressed to think of a car that has come from any company that doesn't begin with a T and end with an A that has had such adulation and praise. I mean, it was just, which was nice to see.
Yeah. So did you get the impression from the Corvette faithful that they were really excited about, because there's been a lot written that this is the Corvette that's going to bring in the younger consumer. If Corvette's to survive, they got to get younger buyers.
I should ask you that question.
Well, it looks good. I mean, I don't know, just because it's mid-engine, is that enough to... the price is right, that's for sure. I mean, when you compare it to an NSX or anything else in that class. I think they finally got the interior right. I didn't see it up close. I saw it in pictures, but it looked... did you agree that they did a good job with it?
Well, I think it's a beautiful car. I mean, I just, if you look at Corvette sales, I mean, they're not much. And then, the thing is talking to some people saying, okay, it's a halo car, right? And so but then my question is
For what?
Right.
We just went over the fact there's no GM cars.
right.
I'm very impressed by the car, having just seen photos and the performance.
And I got to say, and one thing about seeing the photos, the car looks better
in person.
and it's one of those things that doesn't really photograph well. I mean, when they're like, everybody's using this 3/4 front end shot of the thing, and it just looks like that reminds me of like Barbie's dream vehicle or something, because the proportions just seem so wrong. But when you see it in the flesh, I mean, it
Well,
really looks much
the
nicer.
engine compartment shots are pretty dramatic.
Yeah, they are.
The architecture of that is quite stunning, and you look at that and you're like, $60,000 for that? Wow.
Right, you have that polycarbonate over this,
And
so you can look inside.
braces and all that.
Okay, but my question is, was the one displayed going to start at 60,000? Is the one displayed going to start at 60,000, or was that a higher trim level?
It was probably a Z51, which is their performance package, which the horsepower numbers they quoted are for Z51. I don't know how much the Z51 package is. It's probably...
They didn't say. They just basically wanted to say
it's
that
probably like
this was still an affordable vehicle, but
$10,000.
But it was quite an event. But and so before you went in, there were, as you were saying, there were a number of Corvette owners, and they had their Corvettes parked on the outside, and so you could walk around and take a look at those things. And but I just wonder whether this isn't something of the last hurrah.
Well, if this one doesn't sell, it may be a last hurrah. The central problem is people who aspire to a vehicle that reflects their position in life no longer aspire to sports cars in general. They aspire to sport utility vehicles and crossovers. That's just reality. Whether it's sports stars or people who just get out of medical school or get their first good job and they want to buy a vehicle to reward themselves and as a marker of where they are in life. And 40 years ago, those people bought Corvettes, or they maybe bought a Porsche 911. And the number of people who see those vehicles as the place to mark their, as the indicator of their place in the world, those people have shrunk. They're now much more likely to buy a Tesla or a an Escalade or a Cayenne SUV than a sports car. So the sports car segment is just no longer what it was. So that's the kind of the elephant in the room about the debut of Corvette. Who cares about sports cars? It's not so much who cares about Corvette, it's who cares about sports cars. Not as many people as used to.
Why do you think that this car, has a 495 horsepower V8 engine, and it doesn't have an electric motor? I mean, and I'm talking about making it a full battery electric vehicle that it's like.
I would think that's
we're General,
coming.
but we're General Motors. We're going to the future, and here it is right now. And Elon Musk, eat your heart out.
You got to ease people into the future, Gary, right? Like, okay, so
I
you
don't
got
know. I mean, this
to
is
put
the
the
thing I
V8
wonder
in the
about.
first one
But
to.
I mean, okay, but how much? I mean, I got to believe that you'd have to change a lot of the architecture in order, unless they somehow protected this for an electric motor. That, you spent a lot of money developing this, right? And why they didn't say,
Well,
we're going to show the world.
particularly given GM's expertise in electric vehicles with Bolt and Volt. And,
Right.
It's a valid question.
I mean,
It's a small volume V. I mean, even if they did electrify it.
But that's the whole point, because I mean, it just strikes me that they have said that they're going to have an electric future, right? Zero accidents, zero emissions, and there's another zero in there as well. And so it just seemed to me this would have been such a perfect time for them to throw down to the rest of the industry. They'd be able to get it out before the Porsche Taycan, however that's pronounced. And be able to say, oh, and by the way, we're going to sell this to you for, 60-ish, right?
I'm sure they're working on it. It probably just was a matter of it's not ready yet.
Well, I'm sure that everybody's working on it, but I mean, that just struck me as opportunity lost.
Yeah, that's a valid point.
But a pure EV Equinox would do presumably a whole lot better.
To Gary's point, it would in the market, presumably, but what GM has done is put its electrification into kind of nerdy vehicles, whereas Elon Musk put them into sexy vehicles.
Yeah.
He's been far more successful making electrification sexy. GM made it a virtue.
To be fair, everybody's put them into nerdy vehicles, but Tesla.
But Tesla,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But Tesla's been around long enough now that everyone should be learning from that success.
I agree.
And so this is in support of your argument that the Corvette should be electric, or there should at least be an electric version, because that would be a way to bring it to the attention of a whole new generation of people for whom currently the Corvette is like, oh, that's an old man's car.
Right. And,
Yeah.
and to your point, Christie, if they're looking to bring in younger people, I mean, is a V8 engine going to bring in younger people?
Some younger people.
Well,
I mean, there are. I
Well,
was
yeah, I
in
mean-
San Diego last week, renting a car, and the guy at the counter was like, "Have you driven the Jeep? What is it? The Trailhawk? What's the?"
The
Trailhawk
Jeep
version.
Trailhawk, the Jeep
Yeah.
Grand Cherokee
Yeah.
Trailhawk.
And the Charger and the like he was way into V8.
There are still plenty of young people who are into cars and performance. It's not as central a part of the culture as it was 30, 40 years ago, because there are so many other things that are part of the culture, including primarily technology. But anecdotally, everywhere I go, you still see people under the age of 40 and under the age of 30 and under the age of 20 who are very excited about cars and performance. But they're also excited about their smartphone in their hand and the video games they're playing,
Right.
and all that stuff. Whereas 40 years ago, it's like, what do I have to be excited about? Dating and cars, like.
All right, so quickly, any comment about the $408 million loss that Tesla showed in the second quarter?
Well, Autoline Daily's take on it was very positive, that Tesla is moving in the right direction. Not about the loss, but there were some positive results today.
They
that
delivered more
suggested-
vehicles.
Yeah, yeah.
But what is Christie's take? I don't care what the
Well, okay, so you and I are both.
Sean is sitting back there. He's all happy.
Oh, is that Sean's take? You and I are both on an email list with a
Yes.
well-known Tesla pundit.
Yeah, who's been claiming for years that it's going to be out of business.
Right. Well, that's the thing.
I
It's
think
like,
it's going to be like out of
this is
business
it.
like,
This is- they're done now.
yesterday.
Yeah.
I think I'm on the same list.
Yeah.
His
Yeah.
name begins with A.
Yes.
Yes.
yeah. I think they have 9 lives.
The thing that
You know,
strikes me is that, okay, if you look at the Model S, I mean, it's an old car.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous. No other auto manufacturer would have a car on the
Yeah.
showroom
But
that
they
long.
do update it.
I don't care about
they're
that.
doing
It still
over-
looks the same.
Yeah, yeah.
I get all these indication, I get the announcements like we all do about what's happening with Tesla, and it seems, as you say, Christie, no matter what the bad financial news is, the brand news is always good, and car making is largely about brand, and he still has created an incredibly successful brand. And everything I was saying earlier about what vehicles do young people aspire to now, what vehicles do successful people aspire to today, Tesla is at the top of the list. It is just at the top. They don't aspire to Corvette, they don't aspire to Porsche, they aspire to Tesla. That is amazing. So Elon and the company continue to
Bring new buyers in.
to thrive because of that. And it's you can't put a price on that brand and that desire.
So this is something that will make you happy, and maybe not Christie so much. I'm not sure. But so Dan Amon, the CEO of GM Cruise Automation, came out yesterday and basically said, yeah, you know how we're going to have those automated vehicles rolling around by the end of the year? It's going to happen sometime later.
Yeah. They need more time to test, is what they're saying,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. That's perfectly
To
acceptable.
clarify, the fact that I work at Hagerty does not mean I'm against autonomous vehicles or electrification at all.
I need to have a foil.
But I get it, yeah.
So, I mean, I just thought it was very interesting that, he opens up this piece that he posted on Medium. I guess now no one puts out press releases anymore.
Post on
It's
Medium.
all about posting on Medium.
Yeah.
And, in his, since 2016, we have successfully scaled Cruise by more than 35 times, from around 40 people to 1,500 a day. Who cares? Okay. Over the past year, we have raised $7.25 billion from some of the world's prominent technology investors.
Wall Street cares.
Okay,
this is all for Wall Street,
But, I mean, it's just like, we are more than 3 years deep into our unique partnership with General Motors, which provides us with a multi-year head start on the seamless integration of hardware and software and related safety validation benefits. Today, we are the only company with self-driving cars that are manufactured on a large-scale automotive assembly line to the same rigorous standards of safety and quality as any other production car. Who cares?
Well, every automaker is doing this, right? So he's touting their credentials. He's saying they're in the lead. Whether that remains to be seen. We'll
Are they
see,
in the
but-
lead? Isn't Waymo in the lead?
Well,
Who knows?
of the old guard, GM is in the lead.
I mean, if I'm flabbergasted by this.
Yeah. So I was helping a colleague write a mobility report, and I was looking up what various automakers are doing in this field, and everybody's, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but hundreds of millions of dollars are being thrown around at ride-hail, car share, fleet business with the goal of these vehicles being autonomous in the future, because there's a line of thinking in the industry that nobody's going to, there won't be personally owned cars anymore. Everybody's just going to hail or share.
The question that I have about this whole thing of autonomy, and I'll get a gold plaque somewhere in Hagerty for this line of thought, is the fact that it almost seems to me that this is technology push, that basically companies have decided, you know what, we need to invent something that is cool, and there is no demand from the consumer. There is nobody, nobody's
Agreed.
saying, boy, I can't wait till I get that autonomous car,
Yeah.
or gee, I can't wait until I can call a car that's just like an Uber, except there's no one driving it.
Yeah, yeah.
I just don't get it. And Christie, you're saying that they're spending billions of dollars on this.
Hundreds of millions right now.
Well, but I
not
mean,
quite billions.
well, they got 7.25 billion from some of the world's
Well,
most
yeah,
prominent
they
technology
do.
investors.
Yeah, I was just thinking Hyundai has spent
Right,
like
but I mean,
300 million or whatever. but
Why?
So I don't think it's so much about we want to develop something cool. Isn't it about government safety regulations and how the current technologies in vehicles have done nothing to stem deaths on the roadway? In fact, they're rising because people are playing with their phones while they're driving and doing other activities that are taking their mind off driving.
Which has nothing to do with the car. It has to do with the humans driving.
It does, but they've tried to idiot-proof the vehicle and they can't do it. So we've got to make the vehicle drive us because we
So
can't trust.
they just couldn't put some device in the car that, like they have in restaurants, that blocks your cell? Wouldn't that be cheaper?
People would revolt. It's easier.
And then if you had an emergency, you just push a button and your phone would work?
What would stop you from pushing the button all the time?
I don't know.
The
I
tech
didn't think
industry
this
is-
through. Come on,
The tech industry is pushing it. Government regulation is part of it, but government and society are going to be way behind the curve. And now there will be a tipping point, I imagine, but no one knows when that's going to be.
So you say nobody's asking for it. Makes me think of what I wanted to bring up, which is that when I was out in California last weekend, I was with my sister-in-law, and she has a BMW X5, and she confessed she's never used adaptive cruise control because she's afraid of it. And you know, I ask this question often when I'm doing interviews about ADAS technologies. Do you have any data on if people are using this stuff? Because I get the impression, I know she's just one person, but I get the impression a lot of people are not using all this stuff, which is the building blocks of autonomy, right? And I can't blame them because I've had some issues recently. We're testing right now for our Awards 10 Best User Experience Awards, and I'm finding lane keeping systems are almost totally worthless in Metro Detroit because the lane lines are so intermittent.
Or vague.
Are vague that
Wow.
it's off, it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, it's on. It's like, why even bother with the system? I will say adaptive cruise control is getting a lot better, especially at recognizing stop traffic ahead and bringing you to a nice, gentle stop. But there's a way to go for these systems.
Jonathan Brown says autonomous cars will come, but the discussion is like listening to political discussions. Nothing ever happens.
It's happening slowly. I mean, the progress is really, like you and I, we both go to CES every year, and it seems like there's very little new
Right.
news or breakthroughs occurring.
I just think that we're going to continue to see these people pushing it back further and further and further, and then when they come out with it, it's going to be very much restricted. It's going to be just under very limited circumstances.
It's certainly it's going to start in crowded city centers and defined areas, and it will be useful there, and campuses and other defined things or areas. An autonomous vehicle from Detroit to the Mackinac Bridge, I don't see that happening anytime real soon, and certainly not off the major freeway.
Right.
Level 5 autonomy.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Final thing, you mentioned BMW, and I found this to be astonishing. So BMW is going to start charging $80 a year for Apple CarPlay.
Yeah, because they have the wireless Apple CarPlay, right? They're ahead of the curve. You don't have to actually plug it in now.
But you have to pay a subscription to BMW.
Yeah, the subscriptions are the future, Gary. I mean, that's what I keep
Everything-
hearing.
Okay.
When I go to CES, they
So,
want to
okay.
nickel and dime everybody.
Right, but okay, but if I want to get Apple CarPlay on this right now, I can just download it, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm giving away data and all that other sort of stuff, but BMW is charging for. I mean, doesn't it strike you? I mean, I'm the only one that's flabbergasted by this.
It's coming. I mean, everybody's going to start doing stuff like this. $80 a month is a little steep.
A month or a year? You said
A year, huh?
A year, oh, a
Yeah,
year.
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
not too bad. I mean,
what another $6 a month for this,
Yeah.
another $6 a month for that. That's the world we live in now.
I just look at this as they're saying, people are not buying our navigation system, our navigation package. We'll get them somewhere else.
right. Well, why would, I mean, that's another thing I'm noticing is in-car navigation is just
That's a
awful.
very good point. Why buy all that expensive infrastructure that will become invalid within 36 months or obsolete.
So you think navigation systems in cars are getting worse?
Well, I don't know if they're getting worse. They're not getting as good as me holding up my Android phone and saying, take me to blah, 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 or find the nearest blah, 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 and it comes back with the result and starts mapping it and takes me there, or starts mapping it and gets it going in less than a minute. If I'm in the vehicle, I'm going through like 4 or 5 steps. It can't understand me. It's messing up. I got to start over again. I mean, it's just, it can't find a business that's been in business for like 20 years. I've run into that before. It's bringing me results of businesses that have been closed for 5 years or more. It's not good. Not as advanced as what you can get on your phone. So it's no wonder that people don't want to use BMW navigation. Although I will say BMW does in-car navigation pretty good. They're at the top.
Well,
I mean,
they're the ultimate driving machine. They never said they're the ultimate driving silicon.
that's true.
right?
That's true.
Their iDrive systems have been quite good for years.
Yeah, they've improved it a lot.
All right, so let's end this on an up note.
Okay.
Anything?
I can-
Besides,
There's a new Corvette.
there's a new Corvette. There is
There's a
the new book, Never Stop
book.
Driving, Amazon.com.
We're going to celebrate driving forever.
You got something?
I got data.
You got data?
I
Give
got
us, give us,
data.
give us a positive piece of data.
Okay, so a positive piece of data. While traditional gasoline-powered vehicles, so vehicles with only an internal combustion engine, are down 3.1% this year. This is per Ward's intelligence data. Hybrids are up 18.
Don't you work for Automotive? Oh.
Hybrids are up 18% this year.
What percentage are pure electric?
Pure electric are up. Are you talking about share? I don't have that number, and I'm not great at math, so it'll remain a mystery. But pure electrics are up 96.4% this year, and that's almost entirely Tesla. It's almost entirely the Model 3, which is up 285% this year. But so the reason I discovered this is because I was writing about the new Hyundai Sonata hybrid, which was just shown in Korea, the Korean market version of it. And I even wrote the headline before I looked at the data because I just presumed hybrid sales were down this year, and they're not. And actually, cars are a big reason hybrids are up, not necessarily crossovers. So it's interesting because I think people, they do want electrification, but they want to dip their toes in it. You know, they don't necessarily want to jump in head first, except for all those people buying Model 3s. They're throwing caution to the wind, but.
And sort of, well, not exactly to your point. So for the first half, Prius sales were down 36.7%.
Did you see the total number?
29,241. But the RAV4 hybrid is up 26.3% at 29,319. So basically, they sold 100 and change more RAV4 hybrids than they did Prius.
Right. Actually, this year, in the first half, the Fusion hybrid is outselling the traditional Prius, the liftback,
Right.
they call it, by 20,000 units, which is just astonishing because
That is.
Prius used to sell
Because-
20,000 units in a month, you know.
And because nobody knows that the Ford Fusion hybrid exists.
Yeah.
I barely know the Fusion exists in general.
So was it going away, the Fusion hybrid?
I thought it was.
No, the whole thing is
I
going
thought the whole
away.
thing is going away.
Fusion's going away, yeah.
Yeah.
Fusion hybrid is selling that well.
Yeah.
Wow.
The Rogue hybrid actually is up this year, and that's another vehicle that was just announced to be going away. So, but anyway, I think there's a market for hybrids out there.
Especially crossovers. People
got
like
anything-
crossovers.
You got anything positive?
It's summertime. It's a great time to hit the road and drive a car with your own two hands. Never stop driving.
Never stop driving. All right. Joe DeMatio, Hagerty, thanks for coming by.
Pleasure.
And appreciate your insights
Gary.
and your knowledge. And Christie Schweinsberg, Ward's Auto.
WardsAuto.com,
.com.
WardsIntelligence.com as well for all your data.
For all your
and
data needs.
analytical needs.
And that's,
Yep.
she brought numbers. And so I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And it's always good to have you. And Joe will have you back and
Talk more about driving.
talk more about why you need to drive.
Before the government takes your keys away.
That's right. Okay.
And bans you from Getting behind the wheel.
All right, so thank you all for watching, and John will be back next week, so we'll do another show then. So thank you.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion. Lear, a global leader in automotive seating and electrical systems. Borg-Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world. And by BodyShopology.com. Not all body shops are created equal.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons, get your daily news fix with Autoline Daily, and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.